Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. President Trump says if the hostages are not returned by Hamas by midday this Saturday, all hell will break loose. He has also advocated for the U.S. and others to develop and the U.S. to take over Gaza after they move the approximately 2 million citizens of Gaza elsewhere, an attempt to make Gaza eventually the, quote, Riviera of the Middle East. Is all of this possible? Well, joining us now to discuss this and so much more is former veteran Israeli diplomat Shahar Azani. Shahar, great to have you here.
Always a pleasure to join you, Rita, and all of our listeners.
What do you think will happen if Hamas doesn't hand over the remaining hostages?
Well, I think that the message that came out of the White House was very loud and clear. And in general, I want to say that with the incoming Trump administration and the work that they're doing now sends a very clear message of moral clarity, sanity, and common sense, the ability to look reality in the eye. And I think that the president himself has been very troubled with the sight of the Israeli hostages coming out of evil Hamas's captivity and their conditions. We've seen the images that were reminiscent of the Holocaust. So I think that Hamas tried to play games this week and try to show muscles because it's not to be unexpected from the kind of behavior that they have been espousing throughout. But the president sent a clear message, and Hamas, I believe, got the message. We're hearing much mellower tone coming out of Hamas's leadership. So, as the president said, they're trying to play tough. Let's see how tough they really are. So we do expect them to release prisoners, and if not, it's going to be a whole different ballgame.
Do you think that President Trump and Israel is the message to get the release of all the hostages or just X amount as they've been doing with this latest deal?
Well, you know, this is such an evil organization, Rita, as many as we can possibly get. Every person we're able to extract from Hamas's captivity in Gaza is a world unto its own. With every day that goes by, we hear from those hostages who've been released the atrocities that they've been going through, the kind of torture and torment. You know, the 81-year-old Gadi Moses, they shot his spouse before they entered into Gaza. He didn't know that she died, and they kept on telling him that she's sending him best regards. Eli Sharabi was standing on stage wishing on their charade, disgusting charade in Gaza, hoping to reunite with his wife and two daughters that they knew they murdered mercilessly on the day of the massacre. The Thai workers suffered racism and discrimination and tortured themselves. They did horrible things to them. So every soul we're able to save from the Nazi-style terrorist organization Hamas is a win, and we will do so until we've been able to reach the maximum amount, but that does not redeem Hamas or gives Hamas any kind of free license to retain its control over Gaza. That simply won't happen.
You know, you talked about the latest round of hostages that were released. It was gut-wrenching, Shahar, when you see the images, and you brought up Eli Sharabi because it was so stark what he looked like before this, vibrant, fit, and he looked so gone. It looked like almost a whole different person, physically, mentally. How stunning was that for you to see? And I think it was stunning for the world to see.
You know, there was a moment, Rita, that I believe will go into the annals of the photos of the year or the decade or the millennium, when there was a group of the Be'eri, Kibbutz Be'eri people who were watching the release. And immediately when the hostages come out, there is this, communal sigh of relief. There is this joy. And in an instant, Rita, you should have seen their faces change, and they were shocked to the very core of our being to see the shadows of the people that left Gaza, to see Eli, the way he came out of Hamas's captivity, and to think about the torture of having to find out after almost 500 days in the dark that his wife and 2 daughters have been murdered. I have a good friend who works at the Sheba Medical Center, and he told me that when Eli came to the hospital and when he learned about what happened, he cried up to the heavens and said, "Where are they?" And this is the kind of cries that has pierced the skies and the heavens and will resonate within our souls for not just years but decades to come in the communal memory of the people of Israel and decent people all across the world. And the message is clear, Rita. Hamas will pay.
You know, you talked about Eli Sharabi and the conditions they were in. There's so many reports that they were kept in these tunnels that we know that Hamas keeps a lot of them in, barely ever gave them sunlight, clearly didn't give them a lot of food. What else have you heard about their conditions of them and also the way that they've been keeping other hostages too? There are reports that maybe they had to force feed them in the final days so they would actually look even better because, boy, which is incredible because the world was horrified with what we saw.
And in any case, it's not going to work. But what we do know is that they're being held in horrible conditions. We know of some of the hostages who are still there, who have spent the last 16 months shackled to the wall of a tunnel, who stay there in complete and utter darkness, whose wounds from October 7th, 2023 have not been taken care of, hostages that have been hung upside down, tortured and tormented. We've heard the words of Amit Sosana, who was released last year, but she said, you know, in a very telling incident, Rita, she mentioned an incident where she met one of her cruelest captors, a terrorist by the name of Amir, and he starts by telling her that Israel has such great doctors that they saved his 5-year-old daughter who was ill with cancer, and they cured her and gave her life back. And these are amazing doctors. And immediately after he says that, he separates 2 couches and he ties her on a piece of wood, hangs her upside down, and starts beating this woman for over 40 minutes, interrogating her, abusing her, torturing her, until one of the lookout girls, 19-year-old, 20-year-old now, Liri Elbag, comes out and says, "I'm going to put a stop to this." And you know what she did? This is the kind of cruelty. These are the people, the creatures, the monsters that we're dealing with. We know that our hostages are going through worse than hell down there. And like I said before, we will never forget. Israelis will never forgive, and we are fortunate to have an administration here in the United States of America and a president of the United States of America that sees this evil, that sees this injustice and riles against it. We've heard what the president said about drip and drab with the coming of the hostages, and that comes from a really sincere place of wanting to see all of them out. So I hope that we will see not just 3, that we will see 9 or even more coming out this Saturday, and as many as possible to get out of this hellhole.
How many do you believe are still alive? Sadly, we're hearing that there may be bodies. Maybe that's why they're delaying some of this.
Right. We have, one of the estimates that was heard was the reason why they wanted to delay was the kind of backlash that they received once the hostages that were released a few days ago that looked so horrible, and that sent shockwaves not just throughout Israel but throughout the world, and even some parts of the Arab world that admonished Hamas for their behaviors. Now, it's not going to work because we want to get our people out, and like you said before, Rita, there is nothing they can do to change it in the last few minutes from a torment that they've been taking these people, innocent people, through for the past year and a half. According to the reports that we have over 30 of them are still alive. Even today and yesterday, Rita, from reports we've heard from hostages who returned, who gave life signs from hostages that we didn't even know were still alive, that we had no information about, and now we know that they are alive and that they are stuck there. We've heard these reports about over 10 or 11 of them. But parallel to that, we also heard the report that, you and I have spoken about him in the past, 86-year-old Shlomo Mansour, that we really hope that we will see again. who was kidnapped from his home. You know what they did in front of his wife? They took an 86-year-old man. They slapped him across the face to humiliate him. They tied his hands behind his back, and then they took him to Gaza. And we learned yesterday that they shot him on the way to Gaza on October 7th, that he never made it to the Gaza dungeons and tunnels, which in a way I tell myself that it's a blessing that he didn't have to go through that torture. But murdering an 86-year-old man tells you all that you need to know about the monstrosity of Hamas and the monstrosity of the population that elected and supports Hamas in Gaza. This is why the president is aiming at denazification and de-radicalization of the Gaza Strip so that we don't see such atrocities ever again.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
What about Kfir Bibas and his daughter and his mom?
Yeah. So Yarden Bibas, the father, is out. He mentioned several times how much he was tortured, tormented when they told him that Shiri and Yarden and Kfir were seen strolling the streets of Tel Aviv. The truth is that we're very concerned in Israel. We have no information about their well-being, and Hamas refuses to disclose any information about them. We are hoping to see them alive. We will never give up hope. We will always strive. You know that I carry Kfir's picture with me wherever I go. I care. I think about Kfir day in and day out, and I pray and hope that we will see him and his 5-year-old brother and their mother soon in our arms again. This is absolutely inconceivable. Who kidnaps a baby, Rita?
Yeah, it is amazing. And he's now over 2 years old. What kind of a monster kills an 86-year-old, kidnaps a baby, and does what you just described? It is shocking to the core.
Finally, we have a president who looks this evil in the eye and doesn't shy away, doesn't play games, doesn't try to, make excuses for that evil. I still remember right at the outset of October 7th when the atrocities were just unfolding, and I think it was President Obama who came on stage and, while denouncing the atrocities, immediately rushed to explain the context. Let's talk about the context. And finally, we have a president who looks evil in the eye and say there is no context that absolves such acts of evil. There is no excuse, there is no consideration, there is no reason, there is nothing any human being can say to justify any of it. This is an outstanding act of evil, a moral abyss of the worst kind, and truly a stain on the soul of humanity.
It makes you wonder, too, if President Biden had started pounding his fist, even though that wasn't his style, and we saw a lot of weakness on the world stage, how different things could have been. I mean, even President Trump has said that October 7th never would have happened if he was in the White House.
Right. The fact that President Trump speaks Arabic and speaks the language of the Middle East really resonates within the leadership and the peoples of the Middle East. And even if President Biden meant well, we know the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the minute the Biden administration twisted Israel's arm into sending supplies for Hamas in Gaza and for and I'm saying Hamas because I know that the title is supplying the population, but we all know the reality that Hamas took over the trucks, sold the merchandise, used the money to increase its power, to recruit more people to its ranks. So we knew that the aid was actually supplying Hamas. And the fact that Israel was arm-twisted into supporting and supplying these things to Hamas while fighting Hamas absolutely undermined the war, prolonged it, and prolonged the suffering of the hostages.
Yeah, and also as you can see, it gave them sort of an out. It gave them a reason to extend. It gave also Iran. It emboldened Iran. It emboldened all their proxies. The Houthis, Hezbollah, because they saw in America waffling, Shahar.
Right. Exactly. They saw a weak stand in the face of that evil that made excuses for their evil. And finally, we have a president in the White House and an administration that sees things with moral clarity. We will be defeated by evil if we shy away from looking it in the eye. And now we finally have the kind of leadership that bravely and toughly looks it in the eye and said, you are going down. We will not allow this in our midst. This is moral clarity of the highest kind for which we should all be super appreciative and thankful. And I got to tell you, you should see the approval ratings of the president and the U.S. in Israel today and the kind of respect that people have towards the U.S., not just in Israel, but across the world, because this is an administration and this is a president who knows how to do business in the Middle East.
How complicated does it make it that part of this ceasefire deal that President Biden worked out also enables so many Palestinian terrorists to break free? They're, released. And in some ways it's 30-1, and some it's, 50-1. That's a lot of people. I mean, there was one of the guys who was behind bars I was reading. I think he had 18 life sentences because he killed many Israelis. That's only one of the many. So how complicated does it make them that they're going back to Gaza and they're going to start their evil network again?
You are absolutely correct, Rita. They talk of an exchange, but what is the exchange? Innocent Israelis who were kidnapped from their beds on a Saturday morning in exchange for dozens and dozens of rapists and murderers and evil people who are bent on death and destruction. And these people are unleashed back into society to continue to perpetrate their evil deeds. These are people who have blood of many innocent people on their hands. Now, Israel has been, the truth needs to be told, that Israel itself has been on a slippery slope. We are paying the dear price. Think about October 7th, Rita. It's a dear price for the deal that we made for Gilad Shalit back in the day when Israel released 1,027 Palestinian terrorists out into the wild in exchange for one soldier that we love, that we're very happy that he came back. But one of those people who've been released was the abominable Yahya Sinwar, who came up with the horrible plan for the October 7th massacre. By the way, the same Yahya Sinwar who suffered from a severe brain tumor and whose life was saved in Israeli prison through a very complicated operation. The nephew of the person, the surgeon who executed on Yahya Sinwar, was murdered in the Nova Music Festival. So no good deed goes unpunished when it comes to the long-term ramifications of those quote-unquote deals. So we know we're going to have an uphill battle coping with it, but we have to do what we have to do at this point to get the hostages out. And later on, if there is another way to get them out, we will use that way.
What do you make of President Trump's idea of moving the Palestinians out of Gaza, what is about 2 million of them, moving them out and having them resettle somewhere else and then maybe come back in after the place is developed, as the Middle East, the Riviera of the Middle East, as they're describing it, Shahar?
I have to tell you, first of all, I absolutely adore the president's ability to change the conversation. Instead of going through, Rita, the same old, right? Like we've seen in the past couple of decades when Hamas would perpetrate its evil, gets defeated by Israel, there is a lot of destruction in Gaza, then the world, and especially the U.S. administration, reaches its hands to the pockets of our taxpayer money and then takes it back to rebuild Gaza, right? Supposedly it's a humanitarian cause, it's a humanitarian goal, and then a few years later, Hamas does its deeds again and then gets destroyed, and we have the same vicious cycle all over again. Suddenly the president, again, in a great stance of moral clarity, is able to look this in the eye and say, this doesn't make sense. There is no point in wasting billions of dollars on rehabilitating Gaza if it's going to be destroyed again in a few years. This is futile, so we have to think of something else. There has to be a different solution to this problem. And I adore that thinking because it forces everyone to rethink reality and try to address the problem in a way that's going to solve it long term. Now, when it comes to the specifics of the plan, Rita, what needs to be done, Hamas needs to be out, but the Gazan population itself has been Nazified and radicalized by Hamas for such a long time. You know, all of the hostages who've returned attested to the fact that they have seen 3, 4, and 8 and 7-year-old Palestinian kids who were treating them with great amount of malice and evil, who spat on them, who denied food from them. I mean, what more do we need, Rita? When we look back in the Second World War and the acts of the Nazis, and we used to have the righteous among the Gentiles, people who were not Jewish, who extended the helping hand for the Jewish people who were going through those horrible massacre. What happened now? Not even one Palestinian did the right thing and helped an innocent Israeli hostages. Quite to the contrary, we have seen Mein Kampf in Arabic in Palestinian schools. We have seen Palestinian children in Gaza wearing uniform and waving knives and guns, and their mothers praising them, saying they're the next October 7th. That reality has to change. That society has to go through a process itself, and one wonders what happened when it came to the Syrians a few years ago. Millions of them were welcome across the world. What is it about Gazans, Palestinians in Gaza, that nobody wants to have them?
Well, so what happens with Jordan? Of course, we saw the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, with President Trump, right. And he brought up, okay, well, we'll take 2,000 sick Gazan children, put them in our hospital. But right. He's not saying at this point that he wants to take them. Where are they going to go? What do you think?
You know, he's not, this is a process. It's not going to happen in a minute. But it doesn't just have to be, you know, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan or just Egypt. There are many countries in the Arab and Muslim world. There were various solutions that were put on the table, including areas in Somaliland and Puntland. And might I say, between you and me, Rita, without anybody else listening, I'm hearing that Ireland is a very huge proponent of Gazans and Hamas and the Palestinians, up to a point that Israel had to close its embassy in Dublin because of the grand anti-Semitism and animosity there. Maybe they're interested in welcoming million Gazans and Hamasniks into their midst. Why not? If they support them so much, show them the love. Put your money where your mouth is. Or it only satisfies you when it comes to bashing the Jews in Israel, but when it comes to a point where the president will come out and say, if this is what you think, then you do this to help them, suddenly everybody vanishes. But I do have faith that we will be able to find a solution, because right now, and again, the president looks reality in the eye, and he's right, Gaza is not livable.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I agree with you that I give him a lot of credit for being creative, changing the discussion. And also, when he was presenting it, Shahar, he did it in a manner that, listen, the good people that are there, obviously the terrorists or people who sympathize, which, as you bring up, is a lot of them. But he said the good people deserve quality of life. He tried to turn it also as it's a win for them, and it's a win for Israel, and it's a win for the world.
And the truth is that since 2008, since Hamas took control over Gaza, over 300,000 Palestinians have left Gaza at will, because they weren't willing to live under Hamas's rule. For the minority of those Gazans who don't support Hamas, we have seen video images that the IDF was able to extract from Gaza of ordinary Palestinians being tortured day in and day out by the so-called Hamas police. We know the nature of these abominable terrorists and evil terrorists, and we have no doubt that Palestinians will be able to find a better future for themselves elsewhere, and maybe allow the Gaza Strip to be rehabilitated, because the truth is that it is sitting on a prime strip of land. And when Israel withdrew from Gaza, the Jewish towns and villages within the Gaza Strip had wonderful businesses for flowers and vegetables and fruits that exported them all the way to Europe. Only when the Jews left and Hamas took over did Gaza become such a hellhole, by the way, like you said before, using taxpayer money not to pave roads or build Rivieras or hotels, but build cages and dungeons inside tunnels to hold innocent people. Such evil, humanity must not stomach. We must be able to point a finger to that evil and eradicate it for the sake of our souls.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Do you believe, finally, Shahar, that there is some way U.S. troops will be there or not be there? How do you see it, especially if U.S. plays a role in the development?
Well, I think that what Israel has been able to achieve when it comes to eradicating Hamas is phenomenal. Israel's strength in the Gaza Strip and its ability to take out Hamas's many battalions that have been there and have been festering in the area for decades has been absolutely outstanding. I don't think there will be any need for U.S. troops on the ground. I think that as long as the U.S. administration and Washington, D.C. and President Trump are this, beacon of light on the hill, that they're shining and showing the way and allowing Israel to fight the good fight, and Israel can do a great job on its own without denying it the armaments like Biden did, without forcing us to feed our enemies like the past administration did, then that's what we mean when we say it's a whole different ballgame. And you know what, Rita? Hamas knows it, and like we've said before, there is a new sheriff in town, President Donald Trump.
Yeah, peace through strength, and hopefully peace for everybody. Absolutely. Amen. Right.
Amen. And may we seek fear back again in all of the hostages
yes.
in our midst. And thank you for your support and for your voice for justice and for what's right.
Thank you. And Shahar, you always keep the great fight up, and we love and appreciate you. And everybody, be sure to subscribe and share to this podcast. Shahar Azani, thank you. We're praying for all the hostages, for Kafir, and for all of them, that they come back alive and soon. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Rita, for having me.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.